Welcome to the deep dive. We're glad you could join us.
Great to be here.
Today we're digging into a really fascinating research paper. It sounds a bit like science fiction, maybe, but it's very real.
It does have that feel initially, doesn't it?
Yeah.
We're looking at a paper by Latimore and colleagues called Advancing Circular Economies and Urban Agriculture.
Right.
And it's a serious academic study, looking at using some pretty unusual materials for building cities.
Unusual is one word for it. We're talking about industrial hemp and, get this, mushroom waste.
Yes, mushroom waste.
So our mission here is to really unpack this research. We want to understand why these materials and explore the paper's arguments about, how they could genuinely change construction, maybe create jobs, and help build more sustainable cities.
It sounds a bit wild, building with mushrooms, I get it. But when you look at the potential benefits the researchers outline, environmental, economic, they're actually pretty compelling.
Okay, let's jump in then. To really get why this paper is proposing such novel materials, we need to understand the problem first. What's wrong with how we build now?
Well, the big picture is that the construction industry is just a massive source of global carbon emissions. It's huge.
A major player.
Definitely. And a lot of that comes down to the materials we've always used, like concrete and steel.
The go-tos.
Exactly. They just have enormous environmental footprints. Think about the CO2 pumped out just making them.
So this paper comes along and says, maybe there's another way, with bio-based stuff.
Precisely. Using industrial hemp and mushroom waste as renewable alternatives.
And this ties into that idea of a circular economy, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It's about taking things that are often just agricultural byproducts waste. Really,
like things we'd normally just throw out.
Right. And turning them into functional, even high-value building materials. It closes the loop, transforms waste into a resource.
So the study looked at whether this is actually feasible, using hemp and mushroom waste for, regular buildings, houses and offices.
That was the core question. Could these be sustainable biomaterial feedstocks for commercial and residential use?
And what did they find? The significance.
Well, it's potentially quite profound. It's not just about reducing the carbon footprint of construction, although that's obviously critical for global sustainability. The paper also makes a strong case for how this could boost the agricultural sector, create new markets for these crops, make farming potentially more profitable.
Interesting.
And they even pinpoint specific regions, like Pennsylvania, saying there's a unique opportunity there.
Pennsylvania, why there specifically?
They suggest it presents a pathway for sustainable urban development. They could also, revitalize the economies in the surrounding counties, linking urban needs with rural production through these new materials.
Okay, let's get into the materials themselves. What makes industrial hemp suitable for building, according to this research?
The paper highlights some really quite impressive properties once it's processed. You're looking at good strength, some flexibility, surprising fire resistance.
Fire resistance. For a plant, that seems odd.
It does sound counterintuitive, yeah.
Yeah.
But the processing and how it's used, especially in composites like hempcrete, gives it really good thermal performance and fire resistance.
Okay.
And compared to traditional materials, concrete, plastics, even wood, the paper argues it stacks up very well on environmental benefits, safety ratings, plus it's renewable. Goes fast.
And people are already using it. It's not just theory.
Oh, yeah. They point to existing examples like hemp insulation being used and hempcrete structures. These demonstrate, the durability, the safety, the sustainability in actual buildings.
Right. Now, the mushrooms, the mycelium part, this sounds the most out there.
It does capture the imagination. Mycelium is basically the root network of fungi.
Ah, okay.
The paper looks at using it to bind together agricultural waste. You grow the mycelium through it, and it forms a material that's lightweight, also fire-resistant, that keeps coming up.
A key property, clearly.
Definitely, and it's fully compostable when you're done with it.
So it's not just like rotting fungus, it actually holds together, has structure.
Oh, absolutely. It has good insulating properties and enough structural stability for things like insulation boards, maybe some types of wall panels. Not heavy load-bearing yet, perhaps, but very useful.
And again, it's renewable, uses waste.
Exactly. Big tick for waste reduction and resource conservation.
The paper also mentions combining them, hemp and mycelium.
Yes, creating composite materials. And that's where things get potentially really interesting. You take the strength of the hemp fibers.
And combine it with the mycelium's ability to bind things together, insulate, resist fire.
You got it. The idea is to create composites that are potentially tougher, more versatile. You get the benefits of both, creating maybe a unique super sustainable building block.
They did a life cycle analysis in LCA. That seems crucial for proving the sustainable claim. What did that show?
The LCA is really compelling, actually. It indicated that these bio-based materials could dramatically cut environmental impacts across their whole life.
From start to finish.
Yeah, from growing the hemp or mushrooms through processing, using a building, and then disposal. Much lower impact than conventional stuff.
What were the standout findings from the LCA?
Well, a big one is carbon sequestration.
Meaning they store carbon.
Right. Because the plants and fungi absorb CO2 as they grow, the materials themselves can lock away carbon. Some applications might even be carbon negative.
Wow.
Add in that they can often be sourced locally, they're biodegradable, less waste in making them. The LCA really paints a picture of significant environmental advantages.
Okay, the science seems promising. But the big question, is it affordable? Can we actually build cost effectively with this stuff?
The paper argues, yes, it can be cost effective. Cultivating hemp and mushrooms is generally cheaper than, say, mining ore for steel or quarrying for concrete aggregate.
Makes sense.
And using agricultural waste as the base for mycelium materials. Well, your raw material cost is potentially very low. It's efficient repurposing.
And I guess, like any new tech, costs could come down as it scales up.
That's the expectation. As production gets more streamlined and volume increases, these materials should become even more cost competitive, offering real long-term savings, especially for projects focused on sustainability.
And is the demand there? Are builders actually looking for greener options?
Increasingly, yes. There's definitely a growing market awareness about environmental impact. Clients are asking for it, regulations are pushing for it.
So these bio-based materials fit right into that trend.
Perfectly. They offer a tangible, eco-friendly alternative.
Sounds like a potential boom area for investment then.
The authors certainly think so. They see significant growth potential in farming, in new kinds of manufacturing, in construction itself. Investing in this could really stimulate local economies, create new types of jobs, spur innovation.
But integrating this into the existing construction supply chain, that feels like a big challenge. Construction is pretty set in its ways.
It's definitely a hurdle, no question. But the paper frames it as an opportunity too. Well, if you can integrate these materials, maybe starting regionally, you cut down on transporting heavy, traditional materials long distances. That saves money in emissions.
Okay.
But yeah, they emphasize the need for robust infrastructure. You need systems for growing, collecting, processing, distributing. Consistency and scale are key to overcoming those barriers.
And building these new supply chains means you need people with new skills, right? What about the workforce?
Absolutely critical point. As these materials gain traction, you'll see new jobs emerging. Not just builders, but people processing the hemp, managing the mycelium growth. So developing a workforce with those specific skills is essential. You can't just assume current construction skills translate directly.
So not just the usual construction training.
Probably not entirely. The paper suggests needing specialized training programs, maybe partnerships between trade schools, universities, and the industry itself to offer really hands-on training in these sustainable techniques.
And they mentioned inclusivity.
Yes.
An opportunity there.
They did. And it's important. This emerging sector could be a chance to create jobs in communities that really need them, both urban and rural. New roles in sustainable farming, manufacturing, building. It could be a real engine for local economic empowerment.
Okay. Beyond the practicalities of materials and jobs, what about the rules, the policies? What needs to change there?
This is crucial. The paper highlights that current building codes often just don't account for these materials.
They don't recognize hempcrete or mycelium panels?
Not explicitly,
Yeah.
or not with clear standards. So we need updates. We need new standards based on the proven performance, structural, fire safety, etc., to give builders, insurers, and inspectors the confidence to use them.
That makes sense. What about encouraging uptake? Government incentives.
They play potentially a big role. Things like subsidies for farmers who grow hemp or mushrooms for this purpose could boost the supply. And financial support, maybe tax breaks, for companies that invest in the manufacturing or actually use these materials in buildings that could really help stimulate demand.
The paper also linked this directly to urban development programs.
Yeah, the idea is that cities could prioritize using sustainable, maybe locally sourced materials like these in their own projects.
Like for public buildings or affordable housing.
Exactly. It helps cities meet their climate goals, and it supports local industries and jobs. The paper notes these materials seem particularly well suited for those kinds of applications where cost environmental footprint are major factors.
And fitting with the paper's title, where does urban agriculture itself fit in?
This is a really neat synergy, they point out. Urban farms could actually become a source for the raw materials.
Growing hemp or mushrooms right in or near the city?
Potentially, yes. Or processing waste from nearby farms. This drastically cuts down transportation costs and emissions compared to shipping materials across the country or the world. It boosts regional production.
Creating a kind of closed loop.
That's the vision. Urban farms collaborating with local builders or material processors, taking agricultural byproducts of the stuff left after harvesting mushrooms, the hemp stock, and turning it directly into building components. It reduces waste, boosts sustainability, creates economic activity right there.
Is that happening anywhere?
They mentioned a specific proposal, an agricultural technology center in Chester County, Pennsylvania, as a tangible example of how you could integrate farming, processing, and construction needs locally.
That helps visualize it. Does the paper mention other real-world projects already using these materials?
Yes, they do reference several successful projects. These aren't just lab experiments. They point to builds that show measurable benefits like better energy efficiency from the insulation, lower carbon footprints overall, and good durability over time.
And architects are playing with this stuff too.
Seems so. The paper mentions innovative designs, where architects are drawn not just to the green credentials, but also the unique look and feel of these materials. It's challenging traditional aesthetics.
Okay, it sounds incredibly promising, but what are the big word blocks the paper acknowledges? It can't all be smooth sailing.
No, definitely not. They're realistic about the challenges. A major one is scalability, going from niche projects to widespread use.
Right.
Developing those reliable supply chains we talked about is another huge one. And ensuring consistent quality, making sure the material performs the same way every time, that's vital for trust, and getting regulatory buy-in.
So overcoming those needs.
Yeah.
What? More money? More research?
Pretty much. Investment in R&D and developing the technology further, and also in market education.
Right.
Getting the word out, building confidence.
Which brings us to the future. What research gaps did they say still need filling?
More work is needed to really optimize the properties, especially for the composites, the hemicelium blends, making them as strong or versatile as possible, and refining the production processes, making them more efficient, more consistent, cheaper. Continued innovation is key to unlocking even more uses and making them truly competitive.
So, boiling it all down, the core message from this Latimore paper.
I think the absolute core is that these materials, hemp, mushroom waste, offer a genuinely hopeful solution, a way to tackle big environmental and economic problems in construction. It's a path to building differently, more sustainably.
But it needs a push, right? It won't happen on its own.
Exactly. It needs supportive policies, those updated building codes. It needs investment in the workforce and the supply chains. And it definitely needs ongoing research and innovation.
Because if those things align, the potential outcomes are pretty significant.
Hugely significant. The paper paints a picture of genuinely sustainable urban growth. Big cuts in carbon emissions, new jobs and economic opportunities, maybe even government funding, helping revitalize regions, and entrepreneurs creating buildings free from harmful chemicals.
It really is a paradigm shift in thinking. The idea that farm waste could literally be the structure of our buildings. It makes you look around differently, doesn't it?
It does.
What other things that we currently consider waste might actually be valuable resources? What other hidden potentials are out there, maybe just waiting for the right process or perhaps the right fungus to unlock them?
That's a really interesting thought to ponder.
Well, thank you for joining us on this duck dive, exploring the surprising possibilities of hemp and mushroom materials, all based on that fascinating research by Latimore and colleagues.